Welcome into the Triple Option, Paul Catalina and Steven Simcox. Our Wednesday wonderkind. Back on Wednesday. Back on Wednesday for the first time in like 3 Wednesdays.
Can't keep me down.
No. Can't.
Me and Wednesday always find each other again.
Yeah. You know, I learned this from P. Diddy. No. Ain't nobody can take my pride. Ain't nobody gonna hold me down. Oh, no. Until you get arrested. For various crimes.
Yeah, saying I learned this from P. Diddy is a very different sentence now than it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Always kind of wondered about that guy.
Well, we found some stuff out that's not super flattering.
No, not at all. You know, like people are really focusing on the baby oil thing and not the like why. A little bit too much to me.
Sometimes we bury the lead a little bit. We just kind of miss the big picture.
Yeah. Like he had 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Like, why? Let's get into that. But not a great way to open the show, but just still.
That's where we are now.
But so. Food for thought.
Food for thought, for sure.
Food for thought. Steven, you have been spending quite a bit of time on your podcast, Locked on Horned Frogs, discussing the tenuous natures all of a sudden of Sonny Dykes' job.
Yes, I have.
And so outside looking in, what most people will see is he came into a situation. It's very similar to Wade Phillips taking over to Bill Parcells for me, where I think Bill Parcells and the Cowboys had reached their end. That's how Bill Parcells is. And the team was maybe a little bit stressed out from his style. And then the year after, they had this great regular season. Wade Phillips' style really is what they needed in the short term, but long term it wasn't great. And Sonny comes in, takes over, national championship game, 65-7, and then, you know, the players that were mostly brought in by Gary Patterson are gone. And then he's now building a team in this new era of college football where I feel like he's got the support he needs NIL-wise and all that financially. I've never heard anybody say, like, as much as I've heard other schools go, we just can't keep up. I've never really heard that from TCU. I've heard reasonable expectations, like, yes, we feel like we can keep reasonable pace, but, like, they're not going to say, like, we're going to outspend Georgia. Like,
sure.
You know, they know they can't do that. But I've never heard those complaints. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, I think they've struggled like everybody has with building an O-line through the portal.
Yeah.
But that might just be a fool's errand in general. That's a fair assessment. I think that's a really good recap of kind of where they're at. I do think he deserves a ton of credit for what he did in 2022. He won a playoff game, which I thought would buy you a lot more time at TCU. But I think what we're seeing now, a lot of the concerns I had when Sonny got the job, historically his team's very offensive-centric. Defense was secondary. They weren't really known for being physical. And even at SMU, which I think he did a really good job at SMU. June Jones had started to turn things around a little bit, and Chad Morris had run with that too. But Sonny got them to a place where they were winning 8 or 9 games consistently. But his teams would kind of falter in November and December. And when he got here, I just thought, I'm not sure if he's a guy that can really raise the ceiling to a place where you're competing for conference titles. But then year one happened, and I said, well, maybe I just totally got this guy wrong. He's just in a place now where he has resources. And now it feels like we're regressing back to more of what I thought about him, which was, you know, you got some explosive skilled players. You're not very good on the offensive defensive line. You're not physical enough. The defense is an issue. And so in my mind, I'm like, I would love to give him more time. But the problem is, Paul, you know this. There's times where you watch a team and you're like, this is a well-coached football team. They just need better players.
Yeah.
Like they have all the nuts and bolts. They're disciplined. They're prepared. They're not turning the ball over a lot. They're not hurting themselves a lot. And it's just like there's a talent deficiency. This coach either needs to get more talented players or get the right types of guys for what he wants to do. This TCU team right now, they don't check any of those boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like, at least against other Big 12 teams, it's not a talent issue. It's just they're killing themselves every week.
Yeah.
And you can't lose games to Houston at home and expect to get more time to really play this out. Like, we're in year 3. Even if you wanted to say, well, maybe it's year 2 because year 1 was under Gary's players, still, we're past the point where that should be happening. And the inexcusable home loss has been a consistent theme. I want him to figure it out because I think he's a good dude. I feel like he hadn't forgotten how to coach, but he's 8-10 in his last 18 games. And I think the other thing that works against him, there's a few boosters, maybe more than a few, but I know a few for sure, that were not totally on board with letting go of the Gary era. It just sort of became obvious that it needed to be done.
Yeah.
But there's still this is not their guy, right? Like, they don't have any loyalty to this dude.
Yeah.
He's the new face that was following.
He also didn't follow it up.
Yes.
So he hasn't followed it up yet. So now he doesn't have you made the right decision.
Right.
Like that doubt's going to be there. So outside looking in, that's what it looks like to me. It's like, that like they had this, but since it's Gary's players, that there's no more Max Duggan, there's no more Quentin Johnston, there's no more Travius Hodges-Tomlinson. Like all those guys are gone, right? They're all gone. Like that was a great collection of talent that had maybe been worn thin by Gary's personality.
Demands, yeah.
I mean, like, and Gary very obviously, like, was kind of Coach QAnon a little bit, where it was like, oh, they're against us. They're doing this. He was always a little bit that way. But as the team got worse, so did that. Mm-hmm. So, like, we've got to take Grandpa's cable away.
It was that. And then it was also just the constant, like, all these changes that were happening in college sports, and he would get asked about them. And he just never sounded like he was on board with it. I mean, it was just more and more like, oh, this is just a cranky guy who doesn't. Yeah. Who's not getting on brand with what's happening.
And like, if you're a cranky guy who gets results, then people will put up with it.
Of course, yeah.
But the minute that you don't, and then you start blaming everything but yourself, you're done. And that's what happened to Gary. He wasn't taking responsibility for it either. It was always like, this is the reason that this happened. It wasn't me. SMU's trying to kill our coach, yeah. Like all these different things. It was a plot. And you're like, well, they weren't even over there. Like, okay. I mean, like, we've all watched the video. I don't care what the video says. It's AI.
Well, it's such a polar opposite now, too, because the press conference after the Houston game, I mean, Sonny just seemed genuinely confused. Like, he was kind of like, we had a good week of practice. I don't know why it's not translating to the field. I feel like we're taking the steps to get here. Gary was always like, and he was taking responsibility. Gary was always like, well, I know what to do. It's just that none of these other people are willing to do it. Like, I'm telling them what to do. I'm telling them what's worked for the past 20 years, but they're not carrying it out. So it's just a very different dynamic now. But again, it comes back to, I mean, you know this, Paul, personalities. It's all about winning or losing.
Yeah.
The minute that you lose, all of a sudden, all those things about the personality that people used to love, it's like now that's a big problem.
Well, look, Baylor fans hate that Dave Aranda's a nice guy. Like, all of a sudden they hate he's a nice guy. Like, they hate that he's calm. They hate that he's not, like, they want to see fire. They want to see him yelling. They want to see him do this stuff. And, like, I just think you need to have somebody who's genuine.
Yes.
Like, they're genuinely themselves and a productive influence on the people around them. Right. Now, if that gets through yelling a little bit, look, we had Willie Fritz on yesterday. Happiest coach you're ever going to meet. And you're like, honestly, one of the guys who's the most normal, least football coaches like you're gonna meet. And he was a little raspy, and he was like, "Yeah, well, they didn't have my megaphone today at practice, so I had to yell a lot." And you're like, "Oh yeah," and it's not like you watch Willie Fritz; he's not prone to like tirades, you know. But yeah, I mean, like he knows what buttons to push when. Like, okay, this is my we got to be serious thing. This is let's connect kind of a voice. He's got all that about him. And I think Sonny might struggle with that a little bit because he's a guy who goes from 0 to 60. Like, you just see it. Like, there's no, like, everything's fine, bad call.
I'm all over the ref.
I'm right here, as opposed to, like, I like the way that Saban used to do it with the refs. Like, he would go to about 25. And be like, why? He's sternly disappointed with that call. Mm-hmm. Do it again. Like, what'd I tell you? a third time, then he's at full speed, losing his mind. Like, that's where he lived here. Sonny right now, and part of it I think is they've been losing, is that now he just goes 0 to 60 because like the governor's off and he can't manage it.
And right or wrong, it's also tough when you're only seen berating the officials because it looks like you're not holding that same accountability for everybody else, which I get. Like, he's just, as you said, you have to be authentic. I think if he went in there tomorrow and just started ripping everybody, then the guys would be like, okay. Like, they would just sort of roll their eyes because that's not who he is. But it's who is in those moments. And so you have to have that same kind of steady presence with everyone. And I feel like he doesn't have that at the moment. He doesn't really know how to do that with the players and hold them accountable. And he's openly admitted a few years ago, like, they had veterans who just kind of police themselves. Like, they had guys in the locker room that were like, we want to win, we want to be accountable. And they took ownership of it. And then I feel like when you win, it's a lot easier to do that too. When you're losing, player leadership obviously is not as good because it's hard to get people to buy in and be the bad guy when you're not getting the results you want.
Yeah. So there's talk around Sonny Dykes' job. I mean, like there is. I don't know how justifiable it is right now. Like if you take the 30,000-foot view of it, but I can see why. Because this is the second year in a row, and they started off well enough to where you're like, okay, looks like they've got something back, and then something's been exposed, right? Yeah. And that they can't run the ball in a Bryles offense, to me, is mind-boggling because that's never been a problem in that offense. No. Ever. I know that people think it's a lot of passing, but really it's way more running the ball and spreading people out. But the fact that they can't do that, they knew they were going to have defensive problems, but it doesn't look improved at all. They were not ready for Zion Chris last week, which can't say I blame them, but like even still,
can't give up 30 points to a team that hasn't scored in 2 weeks. I mean,
those are the things. Like they found their sea legs, real fast, and then TCU has a confidence problem, and maybe they have a culture problem. Like you hear these stories, Cascazzotti kicking old players off the sidelines, like whether he's justified in that or not, like not a good look. And then those create fissures within the program. And then those people, like all of that's the stuff that eventually gets you undone. I don't think they should right away. I think they need to give him the benefit of the doubt for a little while, but he might have to make he's already made one coordinator change. And I would not be surprised to see them maybe make some other staff changes as well.
That's the tricky thing is you've already pulled the plug on the DC once. Mm-hmm. You can, but it would be pretty shocking to, again, can your defensive coordinator after one season. And I think he likes Kendall for better or worse. I mean, he feels like that offense can be productive and wants to stay the course there. So maybe they move some position coaches around. The other tough thing is this was supposed to be the manageable part of the schedule. I mean, they get the bye week right now, but then they get Utah, Tech. Yeah. They got games against Oklahoma State and Arizona. Oh, Oklahoma State's, they are. Yeah. But Arizona, Oklahoma State.
Well, Oklahoma State and TCU are the Spider-Man meme right now.
Yeah, they are. They're just kind of standing there pointing at each other.
Yeah.
So, even if you're better and improved, if that doesn't translate to winning some more games, then it's going to be a tough sell because the sell is going to be continuity, right? Like just give me another year where I have this coaching staff together, I have a lot of these players together, and we'll take a jump. But that's going to be year 4. So it's just the clock's kind of ticking on figuring this thing out. But I think you're right. I don't think they're going to make any immediate moves. I would say these next 2 games are pretty critical, though. I don't think anybody expects them to go beat Utah and Salt Lake, but you better be competitive. And then you better have a good effort against Tech at home or things could get real hairy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they do. They have to find a way to run the ball. I mean, they've got to do that. And, because Josh Hoover's not going to have it every day.
Right.
He turns the ball over a lot. I think part of the reason he turns the ball over so much is like now it's, we can't run it. It's 2nd and 9. So that means more passes, and more passes means more opportunities to turn the ball over from the quarterback spot.
Right. And credit to Willie Fritz. Houston was begging them to run the ball. Like they were They were rushing 3 or 4 guys pretty much all game long and saying, hey, you can have these yards, but TCU refused to do it, and then they fell behind early, and then it became a game where now, well, we have to pass because we got to get back in this ball game. And so even in a ball game where it was set up for them to get Cam Cook kind of going and get him some confidence, they couldn't find a way to get enough push to do it, or at least stick with the run long enough to get him going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they've that surprises me that they're in this spot.
Me too, buddy.
I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, it just surprised me. I thought that they would be better.
Yeah.
Sonny very openly said they had culture problems last year. That they they started a month later. They weren't it was the first time any of that staff, any of them had to deal with anything like that. So they didn't know the functionality of it, right? Like they didn't understand this is how there's a reason that the teams that always are in the playoff or always playing late bowl games turn around and okay, well, here's the schedule. Well, they were we start spring football on this day. And well, that's only 3 weeks off. All these other teams are taking this much time off. And he kind of admitted I should have just called Nick Saban and been hey, when should I have spring practice? And he'll be you guys, March 10th, yeah. That's what he should have done. But they were a month behind. They always felt like they were a month behind, and they never got it back. You can't get time back. You can't
get that time back.
And then he said they had culture problems, and that was something he had to weed out.
Well, and the other problem is, and a lot of coaches are like this now. So this is not an indictment on him, but if you're CEO guy, right? He's not calling plays on offense anymore. He's offloaded the defense as he has his whole career to the DC. So if your whole thing is vibes and effort and preparedness and all that is bad, then
yeah,
it's kind of like Tim Robinson wearing the hot dog suit saying,
yeah,
we're all looking for who did this. So
yeah,
you're suspect number one,
yeah,
for better or worse.
Yeah, yeah. How many people do you think on that particular meme have shared that meme but never watched the
sketch,
the actual sketch?
Oh, I would say 70%.
Yeah, that's just brilliant.
It's a great show in general. Yeah, but that's one of the best.
Yes. Baby of the Year is my favorite.
That's a good one.
That's my absolute favorite. That one and Shirt Brother.
One I like that one. I like the one where he's in court and they're reading the text messages from his coworkers about his hat. He's wearing the hat. He's wearing this ridiculous hat in court, and they're at this trial, they're reading all these text messages, and the majority of them are about how ridiculous his hat is.
The drive-in crooner is another one of my
he's a good one.
favorite ones. And if you've never seen it, I think you should leave. You should watch it. You should watch it. But it's not one episode's not going to take you that much time.
No, it's an easy watch.
Yeah, sometimes they're only 18 minutes long. Mm-hmm. But
it's time well spent.
Yeah, it very much is. So, Stephen, what do you think if say they don't make a bowl game for a second year in a row, is that they hit that 7th loss, whenever that might be? They hit that 7th loss. Is he done?
I think so. Yeah, and I wouldn't have expected that before the year, but I guess part of it depends on too, how you're losing those ball games. But just in a vacuum. I feel like Big 12 there's a lot of Big 12 fans that have said, man, these schedules now are so manageable. And I think that's a little overblown because there's a lot of coin flip games in there. Mm-hmm. But there's, with this roster constructed how it is, there's no reason you can't win 6 games.
Yeah.
Even now, I think there's a way they get 3 more wins. Yeah. I don't think it's impossible by any means, but I feel like if they miss another bowl game, then, yeah, he's out. And then you're starting from the trouble is then you're starting from scratch again. You're really kind of blowing this whole thing up again.
Well, and look, I don't think it's looking good for Dave Aranda in this moment. Mm-hmm. And I mostly don't think it is because I don't think that you can sell it back to the fans. I don't think Mack Rhodes will be able to sell that back to the fans of no. You saw things things were better, and they are better.
It's just not translating to
wins. But
it's
not translating to wins right now. So let's get some of those.
Whoever GJ Kinney's agent is right now is just waiting by the phone.
And Jeff Traylor.
Yeah, they're ready to start a bidding war, man.
Yeah. So I would think it would be wild if TCU and Baylor were open at the same time.
That would be crazy. They're this like
it would
people would hate to hear this. They're very similar. I mean, like they're just it's the same job basically.
It's the same job. Like the only advantage that TCU even remotely has is location.
Yeah.
Like
which in the NIL era, like how like it matters, but it doesn't matter like it did 10 years ago.
Like it's that's it. And look, there's been times where it hasn't mattered at all, right? So yeah, it is the same. Like the fan bases are similarly as like they have the same level of enthusiasm. Like they've tasted a little bit of the big time, like just a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's made them think that that's how it should be all the time, even though that's not
how things work.
That's not how it is.
You know, and there's also like the idea of both are still in the grand scheme of things relatively smaller schools. So if things are bad, like they can't survive any sort of apathy. There's a lot of bigger schools that, okay, maybe some people check out, but there's other people to fill in those seats.
Yeah.
There's nobody to backfill if things are going awry.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the thing because, yeah, you're right. The fan bases are small, so it's very similar. So that they could potentially both be open at the same time would be crazy.
It would be crazy.
It would be crazy.
And it would be, I mean, I think Mac Rhodes and Jeremiah Donati are both very good at what they do. Mm-hmm. So there'd be a lot of dealing behind the scenes going on. Because, I mean, they'd be looking at the same candidates, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, it's not like one of them's going to get Saban out of retirement or something like that. You know, like, yeah. You know, I do think, though, that, like, there's going to be – John Gruden's out there wants to coach college football. So I promise you that if this job's open, like any job that's open, he's going to be like, I'll do it.
I would love that.
Hire me.
I don't know if it'd be good, but it'd be entertaining.
I hope he does. Have you seen his TikToks?
I saw one yesterday where he looked like he was on coke.
Yeah.
He was talking about Jared Goff completing a bunch of passes in a row.
Yeah,
and his eyes, he was like, his eyes and his rubbing his nose. I was like, what is going on?
He's got this like this. He's trying to do Chucky. Like he's trying to be, because he's got the Chucky shirt on. I think that's the bit.
Well, and I didn't know where he was. The camera shot was just like his face. It looked like a hostage video.
Yeah.
It looked like somebody
in a dark room. Yes. He's in a dark room with his laptop.
Right.
Like, I mean, there's only a couple things you're going to be doing in a dark room with your laptop. and the way he was doing this really made me not want to watch that TikTok again.
I know. It looked like Al Michaels heard about TikTok and kidnapped him and was like, hey, can you do some funny stuff in here?
Yeah. Well, you can come out. You can come out when you hit 100,000 views.
I'm going to put you in a room.
Yeah.
And you just yell at people.
Yeah. Talk about Jared Goff going 18 for 18. Yeah. But, yeah, I think it'd be interesting because here's the other thing. It's John Gruden's going to say, hey, you know, he's already said, I want to coach a college team next year. So every fan base that has a job opening.
He's like, hey, John Gruden.
I'll tell you, there's going to be a segment of Florida fans who were also Tampa Bay Bucks fans who don't understand how the passage of time works. That will be like, hey, why don't we just get John Gruden?
Yeah.
And
that's a good point.
Yeah.
I need these private school jobs open now. I need John Gruden at a prayer breakfast sometime. Just
Dear God.
Yelling at people.
Thanks for the food. And protect our young men.
Bless Spider 2, why banana when we call it.
When we come back, there's some new rule changes in college football when it comes to the transfer portal and recruiting.